What is up, guys? Doing another one down themed build video, and today we're taking a look at Jimmy, the Maniac of the Payday gang. Alright, let's go ahead and take a look at what we're using. Of course, we're playing as the character Jimmy. We're using the Akimbo Heather submachine guns and the 5.7 AP pistol. We'll go ahead and take a look at the mods that we're using. I'm using the Tashina suppressor, a stability modifier, the autofire custom, LED combo, speed pull magazines, and the unfolded stocks. And then for the 5.7, I'm using the tin treated barrel, the champion suppressor, pardon me, a concealment boost modifier, which isn't important. This was a pre-built 5.7 that I just started using for the build. No gadget, the extended magazine, and no sight. We're also using the specialist knives, and we are using the matryoshka, something like that, grenades. My Russian pronunciation is awful, by the way. Bringing ammo bags, using the ICTV, and of course using the Maniac perk deck, which we will talk about further in the video. And let's go ahead and take a look at the build we're using. Had a throwaway point and stable shot. Of course, went up to Iron Man Ace so I could get the ICTV. Extra lead aced so that I could bring extra ammo. Of course, the Akimbo Heathers are bullet hoses, by the by. Got body expertise ace, surefire aced so that we could just spray and pray with the Heathers and crowd control extremely effectively with them, and they do the job quite nicely. There really wasn't a purpose for getting fire control aced. In fact, I could have switched out fire control aced for heavy impact ace, and actually might have helped a little bit, because since enemies fall over due to heavy impact ace and due to the high rate of fire from the Heathers, heavy impact will most certainly trigger when you're just firing it into a group of enemies, and if they're all falling over, it lets you just kind of spray while they're on the ground. However, I think I wanted the 12% extra accuracy while firing from the hip with the Heathers. Regardless, it's just kind of an opinionated thing. Of course, surefire ace so that I can pierce elite SWAT armor so that body expertise can be of some use. Of course, I have shockproof ace to deal with tasers a bit more effectively, specialized killing ace in order to deal more damage with my silenced weaponry. Akimbo ace so that primarily just for the 50% increase in ammo capacity, and up to frenzy basic. The reason that I didn't get frenzy aced as opposed to frenzy basic is I really just wanted to be able to trigger berserker and wanted to have the spare points in order to ace Iron Man, I believe, or body expertise, just any of them, it doesn't really matter. I just took the points out of frenzy aced, which seemed less important than body expertise aced or Iron Man aced. And so I just had to do a little bit of sacrificing there, but it's alright. So now, without further ado, let's go ahead and take a closer look at our gameplay. So this build overall was pretty strong offensively, not strong at all defensively. The 5.7 is a good pistol, deals good damage, has good DPS for what it is. It's also armor piercing. Of course, the Akimbo Heathers have a ridiculous DPS. They're just very ammo consuming. The weapon setup in tandem is pretty good as far as I'm concerned. It's just a little, like I said, a little bit of ammo consumption of a little bit of an ammo consumption problem. Jeez, I could barely get that out. So moving on to Maniac. Maniac is often looked at as one of the kind of lower end perk decks in the game, even though it is a team oriented perk deck, and actually Maniac's pretty handy for your teammates. It's not really all that good for you as a player in general. It's okay, but nothing fantastic. So the way Maniac works is you get hysteria stacks. You can get 240 every 4 seconds, up to 600 stacks, which can take you, due to the fact that you can only get 240 every 4 seconds, it's going to take you at least like just over 8 seconds. Like, it can't be 8 seconds, it'll have to be over 8 seconds due to the way the timer works. So, I mean, it could be like 8.1, 8.5, it could be up to 9, it doesn't matter, just as long as it's over 8 seconds and the timer has actually refreshed where you can get the stacks again. So it's going to take just over 8 seconds to get your max stacks. You get 2 absorption for 2 damage absorption, flat, not a percentage, just flat absorption for as long as you have those stacks built up, and that is taken off of each shot. So most common enemy unit, the Zeal SWAT, on one down deal 225 damage. So every shot that they have on you, so long as you keep your Hysteria stacks up, instead of doing 225 damage, it'll have 48 subtracted off of that, leaving you with 177 damage shot, which is still pretty damaging overall, but I guess not hardly as bad. Your Hysteria stacks, of course, will drain over time. But as long as you maintain your Hysteria stacks up, you'll be able to consistently stay with the 48 damage absorption every 9 or so seconds. Or, keep that within the window. I can't remember how long it takes them all to degrade, but it doesn't take too terribly long. Regardless, I was trying to think of some ways that Maniac could possibly be made better. And, it was kind of I've talked about this slightly before with other builds and other perk decks and so forth. It's a bit difficult to balance things across difficulty in this game because as the difficulty scales up, the amount of damage that enemies deal does not scale super accordingly. Like the jump from Overkill to Death Wish in damage is significant, but not super major. But then the damage dealt from like Death Wish to 1 down is ridiculous. So it's in the nature of 1 down as a difficulty that not everything is going to work on it, which is fine. I've also talked about how I don't feel like every perk deck should be as usable on 1 down as like all the other perk decks like Rogue, Armorer, Anarchist, and so forth. I don't feel like every perk deck needs to be busted beyond belief like some of those are, looking at Anarchist in particular. But I do think that most perk decks should at least be on a pretty usable level for the rest of the game. And by the rest of the game, the majority of the player base plays on anything between, I would say, Overkill to Death Wish, probably. I'm not saying that there aren't a lot of people that can do 1 down, but just looking at the player base as a whole, I'm pretty sure. Of course, I haven't looked at any hard statistics or anything, I'm just gauging. Probably the majority of people fall within the Overkill Death Wish category. So that's generally where most of your balance wants to happen around. I think Overkill does try to do most of their balancing around Overkill. However, the issue is you can be so offensively powerful in Overkill that your defense really isn't that important. Your defense really only becomes important once you get to the higher difficulties, such as Mayhem and Death Wish, where even though you're still offensively a terror, where you can just cleave through enemies for the most part, the enemies still deal enough damage, typically fast enough, that you can't kill them faster than the gigantic swarm of them could kill you, which is not the case on Overkill, where the damage they deal just isn't proportionate enough to kill you for most of the builds that you use. So I was trying to think of some ways that Maniac could probably be improved to a decent extent. And I'd originally thought about trying to up the amount of damage reduction that it gave you per shot, so instead I had to pause there because I think my hands were sweaty and I needed to wipe them off. And instead of having 2 absorption for every 25 stacks, make it 3 absorption for every 25 stacks. However, that would put you up to 72 damage, which, although sounds really good, on lower difficulties like Overkill and below, actually most enemy types wouldn't be able to do any damage to you whatsoever, so long as you were able to keep your stacks up. So the best workaround that I could think for it was, instead of working with stacks that did and I didn't have the numbers figured out for this or anything, but just the idea seemed better to me. Instead of having stacks that decreased a hard number of damage, it would do a percentage instead. The percentages would be better because it would block, it would just be more well spread out across the difficulty. So instead of having 2 absorption for every stack, I'd do like 2% absorption, or 1% absorption even, for every stack that you have, up to like either 48% or 24% or whatever. But anyway, I'll talk about that more in later videos. So, as usual guys, thank you so much for watching.